My name is Marcus Bell, and I never thought my life would spiral into a surreal battle of wills, pettiness, and HOA tyranny over an old bungalow I inherited from my eccentric aunt. But buckle in, because the saga of me, my slightly haunted-looking house, and one HOA queen gone rogue is not just a story, it's a full-blown suburban odyssey with revenge, redemption, and the most satisfying plot twist since Shakespeare thought up poetic justice. It all started on a random Tuesday. I had just moved out of my tiny apartment in downtown Columbus, where the walls were paper-thin, the rent kept climbing, and the neighbors treated hallway eye contact like a personal insult. So when my Aunt Loretta passed and left me her old house in Oakmere Meadows, what she always called God's waiting room with better landscaping, I thought, hey, maybe the universe was finally throwing me a bone. Loretta's house was, let's just say, unique. Think pink flamingos, shag carpet, doilies on doilies, and wallpaper so aggressively floral it could give you hay fever. She had a deep mistrust of squirrels and a collection of porcelain dolls that made visitors nervous. But it was mine. Mine to paint, fix, live in, and maybe finally have friends over for cookouts without hearing my upstairs neighbor's karaoke at 3 a.m. But the dream didn't even make it to the first weekend. I arrived at the house, bucket of paint samples in one hand, coffee in the other. I hadn't even fully turned the key in the lock when a shadow loomed over the porch. "Excuse me," a voice snapped. "Are you aware that your lawn is in violation of Section 2.c, Paragraph 9 of Oakmere Meadows Community Standards?" I turned and was greeted by the most aggressively coiffed hair I've ever seen outside of a news anchor convention. Standing there in a navy blue pantsuit was a woman gripping a clipboard like it was a sword of justice. Her name was Cheryl Ann Whitaker. I would later refer to her exclusively as the HOA Queen of Doom. "Sorry," I said, offering a polite smile. "I'm Marcus Bell, Loretta's nephew." She passed and left the house to me. "I'm just moving in." "Well, Marcus," Cheryl Ann said, pronouncing my name like she was tasting expired milk, "that lawn is a disgrace to our community aesthetic, and you have 24 hours to correct it or face penalties." I blinked. I didn't even know this neighborhood had an HOA. "It most certainly does," she sniffed. "Oakmere Meadows prides itself on high standards, and everyone is expected to maintain them." I tried, calmly, to explain that Loretta had always said her house was outside the HOA's jurisdiction. In fact, she proudly told stories about resisting several invitations to join. She hated rules. She didn't even sort her recycling. There was no way she had signed into an HOA. But Cheryl Ann wasn't interested in facts. She was interested in control. And from that moment on, I became her white whale. The following week was a crash course in passive-aggressive warfare. I'd get up early to haul out boxes, and she'd already be out there, snapping photos from across the street like I was a fugitive. If the trash cans were more than 10 inches from the curb, warning. If I parked my old Tacoma in the driveway instead of the garage, warning. My curtains, not the HOA-approved shade of taupe, warning. She even left me a packet detailing suggested front yard sculptures that would be more on brand with the community's charm. My flamingo, Loretta's favorite, did not make the list. Things escalated when she began putting fake HOA letters in my mailbox, despite not being legally allowed to. And one morning, I found a printed notice of noncompliance duct taped to my front door. That's when I got serious. I started documenting everything. I recorded interactions, saved every notice, and spent hours in the county archives. My gut told me Cheryl Ann was bluffing, but I wanted hard proof. Sure enough, the property records clearly stated that my house, along with 4 others, was never annexed into the Oakmere Meadows HOA. Loretta had refused to sign, on principle and because she hated being told what to do with her begonias. Armed with this evidence, I confronted Cheryl Ann again. "Cheryl," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "my house is not part of your HOA. I have the paperwork. I am asking you, politely, to stop harassing me." She gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that." 2 days later, I came home to a sold sign on my lawn. I stood there, dumbfounded, as a moving truck idled in my driveway. A couple stood near the porch, excitedly chatting with a realtor. My realtor. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the driver. "What's going on?" "We're moving these folks in," he said, thumbing toward the couple. "But this is my house." He looked at the paperwork. "Says here it was sold last week." I couldn't breathe, couldn't blink, couldn't comprehend. And who should materialize like a mosquito in July? Cheryl Ann. Clipboard clutched, eyes sparkling with smug satisfaction. "Well," she said sweetly, Looks like someone couldn't handle the responsibility of home ownership. Don't worry, we'll take good care of the place. My rage was volcanic. Not only had she faked documents, but she had somehow convinced a local real estate office that I had authorized the sale. And yes, she'd forged my signature. Badly. I hired an attorney the very next day. Her name was Dana Monroe, and she was a force of nature with a legal degree and a soul forged in fire. She went over the documents, shook her head, and muttered, "This woman's about to meet consequences." The legal battle was brutal. The couple who bought the house, Blake and Jasmine, were devastated. They'd sold their condo and were days from closing. But as Dana peeled back layers of shady paperwork, a much darker truth emerged. Cheryl had been embezzling from the HOA for years. She created fake invoices for landscaping companies that didn't exist, pocketed the dues, and rerouted payments into an offshore account under a name that literally translated to the Blossoming Lily. You can't make this up. In court, the judge didn't just invalidate the home sale. He tore into Cheryl and like a lion into a rotisserie chicken. She was ordered to pay all legal fees, reimburse the buyers, and sweetest of all, was charged with multiple felonies. Fraud, forgery, misappropriation of funds. She was evicted from her own home. And then came the karmic cherry on top. Her house went to auction. Guess who bought it? That's right, I did. At a fraction of market value, I purchased Cheryl Ann's house, complete with the smug garden gnome she used to place by her mailbox like a mini sentinel of HOA purity. I renamed it the Loretta Center for Neighborhood Peace and turned it into a drop-in community space. Potlucks, yoga, gardening workshops, kids drawing chalk murals on the sidewalk without getting fined. And Blake and Jasmine? I let them rent Loretta's house for next to nothing while they got back on their feet. Eventually, I sold it to them, under one condition: keep the flamingo. It belonged to the house. Cheryl Ann? Last I heard, she was living in an old van near the county line, blacklisted by every HOA in the state and shunned by the very realtors she used to boss around. Somewhere out there, she's probably writing angry Yelp reviews about public parks being too freestyle. So, if you're ever driving through Oakmere and see a bunch of folks grilling in a backyard surrounded by gnome statues and pink flamingos, come on by. That's me. That's my revenge. And that's what happens when a Karen messes with the wrong nephew.